here to tell you about a new release from the Criterion Collection that was sent to me for review purposes the other day. It's Viridiana, a 1961 film by the great Spanish director Luis Buñuel. This is a really important film in his career, and this is a really excellent release from the Criterion Collection. Viridiana. This is a film that kind of connects the two phases, or two of the main phases, of Luis Buñuel's career. His earliest phase was from the early 1930s, where he was living in Paris at the time, connected with the Surrealist movement, collaborating with Salvador Dali, of course, the famous painter, and two films, Un Chien Andalou, or The Andalusian Dog, and L'Âge d'Or, or The Golden Age. Those films didn't have a lot of commercial success. In fact, L'Âge d'Or was banned and censored, and just all kinds of consequences fell down from that particular film. But they were very well known, kind of infamous, and also very influential in terms of early expressions of cinematic surrealism. So they really put Buñuel on the map as an innovator, somebody kind of fearless, also had a sharp satirical edge, as well as just kind of willing to, use kind of an automatic writing process. Whatever scenes could be visualized in the imagination, he strove to make them realized on celluloid film. And so, yeah, all of the surrealist kind of cinema, David Lynch and many others, owes a lot to Luis Buñuel. So in 1961, he had been invited over from the Spanish government. Of course, he was from Spain originally, but had not lived in Spain for quite a few years. After the 1930s Spanish Civil War, won by General Franco and his very authoritarian right-wing allies, he became kind of the governor, the ruler for life of Spain. And of course, Buñuel was not really meant to thrive in that type of environment, so he went into exile. He went to the United States, worked in Hollywood for a short while, and then moved down to Mexico and worked in the Mexican film industry throughout the 1940s and the 1950s. His reputation had begun to elevate a little bit. He was invited by the Spanish government to come back home and make a movie in his native land. Some of Buñuel's allies on the political left thought that was a bit of a sellout on his part, because Franco had not really changed. There was still a lot of censorship, still a lot of oppression and stifling of free cultural expression. And Buñuel was going right back into that to make a movie that his friends thought might be a little bit more of a sellout or a compromise project. Well, Buñuel had a producer who was willing to give him artistic freedom and the funding that he needed. The only hitch would be he'd have to star the producer's wife, which is this beautiful woman, Silvia Pinal. She played the titular Viridiana, which is the name of a young woman who's on the verge of becoming a nun. She's about to say her vows. Her uncle wants to have one last meeting with her before she does that. They've not had a close relationship. Viridiana, in fact, doesn't really want to make the appointment, but she's reminded by the Mother Superior that her uncle has paid her way for her education, her lodging. She owes it to him, if nothing else, just to say one last meeting, farewell, and then she will move into her life of renunciation, take her holy orders, join the convent, and that would be it as far as her worldly involvement is concerned. The uncle, however, has kind of an obsessive aspect going on here, because his niece, Viridiana, bears a striking resemblance to his late wife, a woman who died in his arms during their honeymoon of a heart attack. That's how the story goes anyways, and because of this kind of unrealized dream of a life together with the woman that he loved, he's become kind of obsessive and fetishistic about his late wife's belongings. In fact, he keeps her wedding gown and other personal accoutrements in kind of this shrine-like, exhibit within his home. And as you can see here by this picture from the insert, one evening he cajoles Viridiana to dressing up in the wedding gown and the other apparel that his wife wore on their wedding day. You can see Silvia Pinal's face. She is not very thrilled, doesn't seem to be very happy about the situation that she's in, but she goes through with the obligation. She's an obedient woman. Of course, she's a nun, so she's used to taking orders and following them. things don't go well from that little encounter. I won't spoil what happens. It's a bit of a shock. The movie hinges right in the middle there and then turns into something a little bit more anarchic towards the end as Viridiana takes her religious training, her personal piety, and tries to build an alternative community by gathering in a bunch of beggars and outcasts, social misfits, to form a community that she can serve and lead and try to, better them through her teaching and her example. Things kind of take a wild turn, like I say, towards the end of the movie, and there are some pretty outrageous moments that definitely scandalized the Spanish authorities as well as the Vatican. Buñuel, if you don't know, had a pretty sharp eye of satirical observations about organized religion, in particular Spanish Catholicism. He also had a lot to say about repressed human sexuality and personal obsessions, power, control, authority, the relationships between men and women, especially when there's a big power differential imbalance going on there. And he does it with the great wit and style, but also very subversive undercurrents that will definitely offend and aggravate people who have a more sort of uptight view of those subjects. And so Viridiana created a lot of controversy. It was not allowed to be shown in Spain until 1977, 2 years after Franco died and when Buñuel himself was getting very near to the end of his life. So this film was definitely squashed as far as Spain was concerned, although it did win the Palme d'Or. There's another interesting story about that. The film was scheduled to show at the Cannes Film Festival in 1961, but production ran so late that it was still being assembled and was not actually able to be screened until the last 2 or 3 nights, prior to the end of the festival itself. So I believe its Palme d'Or was only half. Like, they made it a co-winner because I think they had already cast some of the votes, and another film, which I can't recall the name of, I think was also kind of a co-recipient of the Palme d'Or award that year. But this film, kind of just making it in right under the wire, really just caused a great flare-up of controversy and really ignited a lot of interest in Buñuel's filmmaking, the stuff that he had done in Mexico throughout the 40s and 50s. And of course, this helped launch his subsequent work, including many films that he shot in France over the next couple decades throughout the 1960s and into the 1970s. So Viridiana, now available in this 4K Blu-ray combo pack, a great upgrade from the 2006 DVD-only version that's been available and still is available. It's pretty much the same package, as you can tell. Not a whole lot has changed as far as the supplements are concerned. The booklet inside, I'll give you a little look at that. I've already showed you the cover, but it is a nice booklet. It's like 26, 28 pages, a couple of essays, nicely illustrated. My Blu-ray is upstairs in my player, but you can see the 2 discs here. And again, Fernando Rey, another key contributor here. He and Buñuel would have a lot of collaborations in the years ahead. Fernando Rey was kind of Luis Buñuel's on-screen alter ego, and he turns in quite a performance here as well. So, strong recommendation. Check out Viridiana. It's the second Buñuel in 4K that their Criterion Collection has released after El, which was released last year, one of Buñuel's Mexican films from 1953. I certainly hope to see a lot more Buñuel in the ultra-high definition. These are great releases, and it's so nice to have Viridiana back in sort of the headlines, so to speak. I hope a lot of people discover this film and enjoy it as much as I did.